All right, welcome. So perhaps for a moment, you can recognize that there is a primal stillness. And that this is the source and origin of everything. And that it's not at a distance from you, rather it is yourself. So just notice that. And either you just notice it right away. So to be clear, when I say it's not at a distance, it's not separate from you, it's not anywhere else, it's right here. So if you're looking for it and it takes any amount of time, you're looking in the wrong direction, because you're looking somewhere. You're having to take some journey, you're having to involve yourself in time somehow. So just see that that's not it. So just notice what's prior to that. And then you just glimpse it instantly. So this primal stillness is very attractive. It's so very attractive. If you allow it, it will just draw you in, and then you can just sit here in silence because it's so attractive. There's nothing that can be added to it. So any attempt to add anything to it only, if we allow it to, any attempt to add anything to it only demonstrates even more clearly the completeness of this that's already here at the heart of our own self. So just know that that's actually all that's all that this is about. That's just a point. It's all just a point to that. So all of the words are very much of secondary importance, and it's really just to point to this, which is who you are, and it's not complicated. It's not at a distance. And it's not something that you can understand in the conventional sense. So now, either you glimpse it or you don't. And in either case, if there's still any doubt or thought that comes about, then notice that what that doubt or thought is has something to do with how you can get hold of something in order to fix something that you perceive is a problem. Now, it may be well formulated, the problem may be well formulated, or it may be vague. But in either case, it just see that you have a perception of a problem. You believe there's some kind of problem, some kind of deficiency, something lacking, something that's off, something that's not quite right. Or maybe very much not right. Although probably not that much not right, because if that was the case, you maybe wouldn't be here. It has to be, and if you tell the truth, there has to be, and this might surprise you, there actually has to be a certain level of stability or clarity or recognition even to be here. Like I said, that might surprise you, because you might, if you look, you might see, well, I don't seem to be that stable. Yes, of course, who you take yourself to be is not stable at all. I mean, you see, that's just constantly coming and going. There's nothing there at all that can be got hold of, but there's a recognition of something that's supremely stable. And that's what I'm pointing to. So there's at least some recognition on some level of that stability. Otherwise, you couldn't be here. I mean, there really wouldn't be any way. This wouldn't make any sense at all. I mean, it doesn't, let's face it, it doesn't make any sense, but it but it would be so completely foreign that you couldn't be here unless there was some recognition of it. And so that's something. And that's really quite remarkable, actually. So, but again, you notice that any thought that arises, actually, this is just a generalization, any thought at all of any kind has to do with some sense of some kind of problem. That might seem also like quite a strange thing to realize, but if you just look, you'll see that that's true. Any thought of any kind, anything, every thought that you have is founded upon one core thought. There's one essential thought that every other thought, it rests upon. And that one thought, you look and see this is so, has to do with the existence of yourself as something. So that, if you consider this, okay, if there was nothing at all, clearly there couldn't be any movement. In order for there to be some kind of movement, I mean, like Newtonian physics describes this pretty well. There has to be something relative to something else. There has to be something that's moving relative to something else. There has to be something, if you wanted to, for example, if you want to jump, you have to have something that you can push off of. If you were just floating around in space, you couldn't jump because there would be nothing for you to push against. There has to be you and something else. So you, which you take to be a thing, that you that you conceive of yourself as being, by definition, is incomplete. It's something which is in relation to something else. You can't have an object you can't have a singular object. All objects exist relative to other objects. So this primary thought upon which every other thought is founded is this, we call it the I thought, the notion that I am this thing. So I have a definition, I am something. So just look and see it, that's so. Every other thought uses that as its basis. That's the reference point for everything else. Anything that you could think. Whatever thought you might have, the foundation is this I thought, that I am this thing, and this thought is occurring to me. I am seeing. I am doing, I am experiencing, I am feeling, I want, I don't want, I like it, I don't like it, I understand it, I don't understand it. It's all, everything, whether it's explicit in the language or not, it's always there implicitly, that this I is the primary reference, and that I is, we conceive of as an object. And that objective self is by definition lacking. It's incomplete because it's relative to something else. Otherwise, we can't know it as a thing. For us to know it as a thing, it has to be something set apart from something else. So built into it is that I am something that is separate, something that is deficient relative to the whole. So this is the basis, this is the basic assumption that we make unconsciously millions of times every day. And so you can start to see that everything that you think about has as its basis this incompleteness. So there's everything that we think reinforces this notion, which turns out to be false, but we don't recognize that until we do. It reinforces this notion that I am deficient. So we have thoughts that are attempting to solve or resolve a problem. I don't really like the way I feel. I'm not confident. I seem to be lacking. I don't have faith. I don't have hope. Whatever it is. However we conceive of it or don't conceive of it, we just sense and feel there's something that's off, some kind of problem. Then we're set about trying to resolve that in all the ways that we do. All kinds of ways. You just see how many different ways we try to do it. So we try to do it through various kinds of exercises, where those could be mental exercises, spiritual exercises, psychological exercises, emotional exercises, spiritual exercises, and so forth. All kinds of different exercises that we try to utilize in order to solve the problem. Or some kind of discipline or structure. So same kind of thing, dietary structure, physical structure, mental structure, all kinds of things that we try to put in place. But whatever it is that we're trying to do, see how every one of them takes as their assumption, the starting point, that I is this separate thing that is by definition deficient, is trying to solve its problems. So what we're doing unwittingly, but nonetheless, is we're reinforcing the very thing that we're trying to get rid of. We're trying to solve it. By trying to solve it, we're reinforcing it. So what do we do about that? You can listen to my children's plans. I don't know if you can hear them. I can hear them. It involves a rope of some kind. So just see how this, every thought that arises, There's not a single one that manages to escape this. Every single one of them falls into the same trap. Because every single one of them takes as its starting point this separate, deficient self, objective self. Who else do you imagine is doing all this? Who else do you imagine is thinking all of this? Who else do you, I mean, it's always comes back down to this sense of being an objective self. And the subjective self is always deficient. Now, the good news is that the actual remedy for this is intrinsic to what's posing as the problem. That might seem hard to believe, but it's true that the true remedy is already present and intrinsic. It's what we perceive wrongly as the problem. So it's not about trying to have a better thought or the right thought. It's not about having the right action or better action. It's not about the right understanding. It's not about any of that. What it is about, in a sense, we could say, recognizing what's prior to this assumption. And in that recognition, we are receiving, or we could say being received by, either way works. It's just a conceptual model to understand it. So receiving, and well, I'll say receiving and being received by the actual remedy. So let's see if we can discover this and experience this directly right now. So look to your own experience and just observe. So it's not complicated. There's not any right answer here. It's just to observe your own experience. That's it. It's so simple. Just observe and just notice. So just see in your own experience what's happening. And you can surely see there are thoughts happening. And these thoughts, maybe you don't quite catch the thought. Maybe the thoughts are obvious. Maybe you don't quite catch the thoughts. Doesn't matter. Okay. So there's no right way, so long as you just are sincere. Okay, so just observe your experience and you'll see, maybe you observe the thoughts, maybe you observe sensation. Maybe you can observe that there's a kind of position that you take relative to whatever it is that's occurring. So you take a position, you come down on one side or the other. This is good, this is bad. I trust this, I don't trust this. I'm safe, I'm not safe. I'm certain, I'm uncertain. I'm there, I'm not there. You know, it's just a position that you take, and just observe that. See how you're either very accepting or you're like on guard, looking for the right experience, the right thoughts, the right things. Just notice that, and just notice that position, that way in which you take a stance in regard to this experience, and notice how that position is actually what creates this sense of division. It's what creates a sense of being someone. It's what creates a sense that there's some kind of deficiency, that there's some kind of problem, because as soon as you take that stance, you've divided, not really, but you've imagined that you've divided indivisible reality into duality. So now all of a sudden, there's good and there's bad, there's desirable, there's undesirable, there's safe and there's unsafe. And who's in the middle of that? Well, you are, aren't you? I mean, don't you imagine that that's so? You imagine, well, I'm the one, I'm here, I'm the one who's feeling safe or not feeling safe. And in this sense, it actually doesn't matter what position you take. You come down on either side. I understand it, I don't understand it. I like it, I don't like it. It's good, it's bad. Whatever position you take, whatever orientation, whichever side, doesn't really matter. Of course, it gets our attention more if we tend to come down on the so-called negative side more often. If we say, I don't like it, I don't feel safe, I feel insecure, I'm unhappy, and so forth and so on, then that tends to get our attention more. Versus, I would venture a guess that it seems very unlikely that anybody here is the sort of person who just consistently all your life, you just are coming down on this so-called positive side where you say, I feel safe, I feel happy, everything's good, positive, optimistic, happy, etc. Because if so, you wouldn't really have gotten your attention. It gets your attention more when you tend to come down on the negative side more often. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. You just see that you're taking a position, and that this position, what is the foundation of that? Just look to see, how do you know that this experience is however you've defined it? How do you know that it's good, bad, desirable, undesirable, happy, unhappy, etc.? So just look to your own experience. You don't know, do you? I don't know. It's not, doesn't seem possible to find that out. Why? Because it's just an assumption. We just chose. We just came down on one side or the other. Now, take a look and see how, if you can't really know, of course you have the thought, you have the thought, but it must be, it certainly must be. I'm certain that pain is bad. Let's take that as an example. I'm certain that pain is bad. I'm certain that pain is undesirable. It must be. This is the position we've taken, and we believe that it must be the correct one. It must be the correct position. There must be some sort of absolute reality, absolute truth that, etched in the fabric of the universe, it says pain equals bad. We think that must be true. And so you just look though and see, what is the basis of that? How do you know? How can you know that that is so? Just look to your own experience, and you can substitute whatever you want here, whatever is most relevant for you. It doesn't, if pain is the relevant thing, great, but whatever it is, whatever gets you, whatever is eating at you, whatever plagues you, whatever the recurring thing is, whether it's anger, anxiety, frustration, disappointment, grief, whatever depression, whatever it is, whatever you think, and you don't even have to have a name for it, by the way, because it doesn't really have a name, but whatever whatever this experience is that for you seems to be just absolutely intolerable, absolutely bad, the one that you just cannot seem to, you've been fighting and struggling with for a long time, and you can't seem to make any real progress with it, that one, just take a look and see right now, how do I know that this is bad? How do I know that it's unacceptable? How do I know that it's intolerable? How do I know that it's a problem? And just have to see that you don't know. There's just this insistent thought that says, but it must be, but you don't know. Now, see that in your own experience, so it's really, really important that you're looking for yourself, because it's not about getting the right answer. The right answer is easy. I mean, the right answer is cheap. Everybody here knows the right answer. If you don't know the right answer by now, I'll just give you the right answer. The right answer is there's absolute oneness, peace, and you are that. I mean, that's the right answer, but it doesn't do you any good, does it? So it's not about getting the right answer, because the right answer, you know, that's easily available. It's about recognition. And for there to be recognition, we have to look for ourselves, and we have to be very persistent in it. So look now. And if you say, I don't know how to do that, of course you don't. I mean, yes, I completely understand. I know the frustration of hearing this kind of message, and then that frustration arising, but I don't know how to do it. Just tell me how to do it. But if we already knew how to do it, we wouldn't need the instruction. So that, or let's say the practice. Okay, so you just have to practice. You just have to keep looking, even though that thought is there, that I don't know how to do it. I can't do it. Actually, you see, that's the important thing, is that you persist in the looking, and in the looking, everything is revealed. Because when you look, then all of the objections present themselves, all of the beliefs, everything that is generating presently what you perceive to be this intolerable experience. You see, all the component parts of it are revealed to you. This is like a reverse engineering. So this is extraordinarily practical, very practical. It's something you can actually apply yourself to it, because you find yourself, granted, you're in a, so you've taken a position. It's a false position. There is no such place, no such thing. So it's an entirely false thing. But here you are in this land. It's totally false. But nonetheless, you want to come back to your starting point. How do you do that? Despite the fact that it's all false, you just apply the same rules that you would apply to anything else. You get the map and you go back the way you came. So that's what we're doing. It's very practical. So we're looking directly at our own experience, and we're looking step by step, breaking it down through this inquiry. Despite the fact that we say, I don't know, we're looking. We actually have to admit, I don't know, and then look. Because as long as we say, I know, we can't see. All that's happening, as long as we say we know, is there's just a fixation on this conceptual overlay, which is totally symbolic and has nothing to do with the underlying reality. So it can't help us. But the moment we say, I don't know, truthfully, through actually looking and realizing I don't know, now we're beginning this journey of reverse engineering. Now we continue to look at your experience and see, okay, this thing that I have been certain is intolerable, have been certain is a problem, that I've been certain is bad. Let me look right now and see, how do I know that that is so? And you have to admit, when you look sincerely, that you don't know. You don't know how you know. You just have assumed that it was so. So now you've taken another step back in the direction of where you came from. So now continue to look and see, okay, now I'm in this, now it's like things are starting to unfold a little bit, starting to open up a little bit. Now it's very mysterious, murky. I don't know. I'm in this new territory that where I really don't know. So how do I know? Just keep looking to see, how do I know? And now notice in order to do this, in order to actually sincerely look, you have to be willing to let go of the baggage that you've been holding on to of this false knowledge. And we cling to the false knowledge because we're very afraid. Can you see that? Can you see that you're very afraid? This process should reveal to you how terrified you are, because at each step you're asked to, or you're invited to, let go of more false knowledge that you've been clinging to, but you didn't even realize you were clinging to. And in that giving up or letting go of that false knowledge, what's revealed to us is just how insecure and terrified we are. So we cling to all of the false knowledge. And what do I mean by false knowledge? The false knowledge is everything that we think we know. How to be successful, what it means to be successful, how to be happy, what it means to be happy, who I am. That's really at the heart of it. I think, well, I'm this person and I have these talents and I have these weaknesses and I have these ways that I hide the weaknesses and I have, these modes of deception, but I call those good, and all these things that we have that we cling to. And as you just continue to look, how do I know? How do I know? How do I know about this experience? How do I know? Whatever you just keep looking, and as you keep taking steps, you see, that's what I'm saying. It starts to it reveals to you that it's inherent in this is the exact remedy, because as we inquire directly into the problem to find out what is it really, it reveals to us step by step all of the things that the falsity that we've been clinging to. And it invites us step by step to let that go. So it's like, you can't enter into this, the true heart of the remedy. You can't enter into it with so much baggage. So it squeezes you each step that you take as you're retreating into this remedy through this inquiry. You have to give up what's false. And it's not complicated or difficult, actually. All it is you just abandon whatever is being presented to you. So whatever doubt, whatever thought, whatever objection arises. So for example, these are just examples, okay? But it could be like, I don't know what he's talking about. Or I can't do it. Or I'm not intelligent enough to do it. Or I guess I need to do some other practice before I can do this. Or so many possibilities. Or the conditions are not right yet. But see, you just see, what are those conditions? What would be the right conditions? And it's revealing to you all of the stuff. So this, it starts to get really, you start to get pinched. It starts to reveal to you the stuff that you've really been holding on to and trying desperately not to see, because it's a little bit ugly. And just be willing, have that courage just to see it anyway. And when I say just to see it, I don't mean you have to think your way to it. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to cognize it. You don't have to visualize it or imagine it or have a thought about it, but just trust in the process. Just keep noticing at each step, what is the doubt? What is the fear? What is the objection? And how do I know that that is true? So it'll come at a certain point, it just comes down to, but I feel so uncomfortable. And you just have to be willing to see, how do I know that that is true? And the moment you look, how do I know that's true? You're shown, if you're sincere, it's not hard, you're shown that you don't know that it's uncomfortable. So then you have to, you're invited to let go of that false notion as well. See, what if it's not even uncomfortable? Now, this doesn't mean you have to get rid of the thoughts. It doesn't have to mean you have to get rid of the sensations. It doesn't have to mean you have to get rid of anything. Nothing has to be gotten rid of. It's just to look and see, so that even as this, there could be screaming metaphorically, hopefully not literally, but like this internal screaming sense of squirming, a sense of, agony. All of these things could be happening or not. But even if those are happening, just see how there might be a thought that says, this is a problem. This experience is a problem. This experience is unacceptable. This experience is an obstacle to the truth that I'm wanting. Now, how do you know that's so? See, what if, you just have to be open to this possibility. What if there's actually no truth whatsoever to any of these notions? Now, notice, perhaps you start to notice that here all along, see, you're still here, aren't you? And start to notice that this self, who you really are, the one who has not gone anywhere, the one who's consistently here from the very beginning to now. Everything else comes and goes. All of the other notions come and go. All of the positions come and go. As all of those things dissolve, whether you come down on the side of I like it or I don't like it, or whether there's no notion of liking or disliking at all, we can do the same with any kind of polarity. But when you just see through all of them, still I remain, not the notion of myself, but what I is really pointing to. And see here underneath all of the chatter and clutter and all of that is this profound silence. So just allow yourself to surrender to that. And if you don't know how to do that, we'll just see that's more of the same, isn't it? So then you have the key. If the notion is, I don't know how to do that, just look to see, is that even true? Do I have to know how to do it? Is any knowing necessary? See, do I have to come down on a side here? Just see what is the basis of the assumption that something has to be known or done or correctly achieved or any of the rest of it? What if, isn't it possible that all of that is just nonsense and can just be let go of? And see how that just brings you ever more here. Not that you can become more here, but it points you increasingly here. And that's why I say the remedy is intrinsic in what we perceive as the problem. The perception of the problem, we could say, is going one way. If you just notice it, the same exact thing the other way, it's the remedy. This is the problem, this is the remedy. Same thing, but just seen in this slightly different way. And you start to just be drawn into it, and you just start to notice, I am this source. I am this stillness in which everything is arising and falling. So just remain restfully still here and observe. And so this stillness is not contradicted by the appearance of movement. So agitation can happen, frustration can happen, discouragement can happen, anger can happen, sadness can happen, excitement can happen, anything can happen. Just see, none of that can actually contradict this, which is here underneath all of that. So again, I'm giving you the practical, very, very practical method of inquiry that allows you to recognize this directly now. So you have to apply it. You're postponing because you think, I'll do that later when I don't know, when I'm more comfortable, when I'm happier, when I feel like it. You're fooling yourself, but just look now. It's so important that you look now, always now, because the secret to this is that it's like a skill, and the more that you develop the skill, the more easily, or let's say the more skillfully you can apply it, even when the intensity is very high. Now, this is the opposite of what we usually think is what we want. We usually think that what we want is to dampen down the intensity, because we say this intensity is so high, I'm so uncomfortable, I dislike it. I need to dampen down the intensity and then I'll feel better. But actually, that intensity is aliveness. And we don't want to, in truth, we don't want to dampen it down at all. Of course, it makes sense from the perspective of perceiving that I am this objective thing that's limited and deficient and can't handle all of this intensity. Then yes, of course, it makes sense. You got to dampen it down. But you see that habit, only the more we try to dampen it down, the more resistance we're being met with. So there's actually more intensity, and then we have to resist harder. And then we get into this kind of deadlock, and that's the right term, because we carries us right to the grave. Very unhappy. And all the while saying, why me, why me, why me? Why can't I get a break? But the secret is that, as I said, the supposed problem holds within it intrinsically the remedy, and that remedy is like a conduit that allows this this life force to express abundantly rather than be repressed, which we experience as great misery. But the inquiry it opens this conduit, this channel by which that life force is expressed, and you can feel it as right now, as you inquire in this way. Just notice as you're following these simple steps. I hope that you understand how simple it is and how direct it is and how it's very, very, very approachable. So this is, I promise you, approachable to each and every one of you right now, no matter what. That's the beauty of it, is it is absolutely approachable, accessible. So all you have to do is just right now, just inquire directly, just by noticing your experience and then noticing where you're taking a position. You can just feel it. Or maybe you notice it as a thought, but it manifests as this kind of, oh, I don't like it. Even if it's, I do like it, it's still there. You see, I like it and I don't like it. All these polarities, they're a singularity. Whichever side we choose, we're expressing or choosing both simultaneously. That's why you can't ever get enough satisfaction by trying to get what you like, because the more you do that, the more you're in this shadow here is this expression of I don't like. So we have to look to how we create that false division in the first place. Just look directly right now at that intensity, that what you perceive as a discomfort, or you perceive as the problem. Look at it directly and just notice that you are making an assumption that you know what this is, that you know that this is desirable or undesirable, that you know anything about it, and just look to see what is the basis of that. Does it have an absolute basis? And by absolute, I mean beyond your own thinking, beyond your own mind, beyond your own perception. Is there any absolute ground on which that division rests? You have to see, if you look sincerely, that there's no absolute ground for it whatsoever, that it's all entirely an assumption, just one that you've overlooked. We all have done this. So this isn't about blaming or shaming either. Just it's more like, hallelujah, I'm on the right path. So don't get hung up on any of this kind of nonsense, like, oh, well, I wish that I had learned this earlier, or oh, I'm so shameful because whatever. Forget about it. Just give thanks that you're here receiving this, looking now. What an enormous blessing. Like I've said it before, this is such a rare thing. So very rare. You look around and you see how there almost nobody even has the faintest clue what true happiness is, what true peace is. Isn't that shocking? The most successful, by our social measurement, people, oh my goodness, they don't have the first clue. They're so unhappy. So it's very rare, extraordinarily rare. Just give thanks that you are able to hear it. And that's like your get out of jail free card. You just remember that and play that card. Every time you get hung up on a snag, you just remember, I am blessed. What an enormous, rare gift I am receiving. And I commit to making use of it, to recognize the profound depths of true liberation at all levels, now and forever. I will never look back. You just make that commitment over and over and over. It will unsnag you. Then you just keep looking. And you just see whatever surfaces next, this doubt, this fear, this concern, this whatever. And you just look, what is the basis of this knowledge? Do I know on any absolute grounds that this is so? Is there any absolute truth here? Or is it just a fabrication of my own thinking, perception, imagination? And you'll see, sure enough, no grounds whatsoever. And you see, again, it's just an invitation to release those false notions of bondage. You're being shown through this simple process, you're being shown, as I've already pointed out, the mechanics by which you have unwittingly generated this false bondage. And you see that it's all constructed out of assumptions. That this is not right, this shouldn't be happening, this is a bad experience, this is an obstacle. See, all these assumptions. And you just follow them, trace them back so simply. This is actually effortless. You don't have to make any effort at all. Just watch, and it does it for you. It just reveals, here's the next one. You're just being drawn in, and you just watch. And then as it's revealed to you, you just inquire so simply and lightly. Here, oh, here it is. It's being shown to me. Here's the agitation. Here's the discomfort. How do I know that this is actually what I believe it is? How do I know that I'm correct here in my position relative to this? How do I know that? Look carefully and see. You don't know. So then you're, importantly, you have, now don't try to work this all out in mind. See, it's revealed. You see the falsity of it, then let it go. If you get hung up on it and you're trying to, just keep holding on to it and looking at it, well, what is the absolute basis? You're still assuming there's an absolute basis. You have to just see there is no absolute basis. Just keep looking. It's just so simple, gentle, light, and you see no absolute basis. Now let go. Because the doubt, of course, can keep going round and round and round. Well, how do I know for sure? You don't know for sure, because that would presume that there's you presume there's an absolute basis. But once you see, it's like, how can you know for sure that there is no Santa Claus? Of course, you can't know, but you know there's no Santa Claus. In the same way, once you see there is no absolute basis. Now, you can't prove for sure there's no absolute basis, but you know there's no absolute basis. Now let it go. Don't cling to it. And see what that reveals to you. It's that what I'm describing as it opens this conduit so that all of that pure energy, that life force, which had previously been suppressed, locked into these false divisions, it's opened and it's released and it's expressed now. What you've been calling, well, what I've been calling intensity, and what you've used, whatever words you've used, notice the experience of that as it expresses here without any of those false notions imposed on it. Just feel that. And then you start to sense the real power of what I'm talking about, that the ultimate remedy that I'm saying is inherent in what we've called the problem. It was locked up through these false divisions. As we reveal the falsity, it's liberated, and feel the immense power of that and how it cleanses the perception. So it's like a dance. As you play along through this simple process, these are your steps, okay? You're taking these steps and it dances with you in this very intimate way where it cleanses the perception. You can just feel that liberated energy cleansing the perception, and it's a miracle happening. Now, we're over an hour, but I'll just make this one more point just to kind of round it out. You can notice this dance, this cleansing of perception, and then I want you to also see how profoundly liberating this is at all levels, so that it's not only at an unmanifest level, and it's not only at a subtle level, but it's at all levels. It's even at the gross level. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that as you allow this dance to continue, as you continue with this process, this can be an ongoing process, this process of inquiry, this dance that I'm describing, this can be going on all the time. And as you continue to allow it to go on all the time, what you can start to be witness to is how, see, it's like I said, we're reverse engineering. So we're seeing how it is that we have constructed these false limitations, the false limitations, which as we go subtler and subtler and subtler, we're seeing how at the very subtlest level, there was just this sense of contracting into a false, separate, objective self. And as you follow that all the way back, poof, you are absolute freedom. This is the direct experience. I am absolute freedom. I am not an object. Now, we've reverse engineered, but we don't need to just stay here. This is a play, a dance. So now watch how this works in both directions. As we reverse engineer, we undo the falsity. We return to this clarity of I am pure freedom. And then noticing this fount of pure energy, we can actually start to peer into, because you notice you're still perceiving, right? I mean, perception is still occurring. So it's not like we obliterated that. Creation is still occurring. But now we can be a conscious creator. Now that might be slightly dangerous territory, especially to leave it here, but I want to plant that seed, so to speak, so that you can have that awareness that this is not about remaining exclusively as an unmanifest self. because here, this is still happening. This perception is still occurring. All of this is still occurring, but now it's a dance. Before it was this, I was lost. I thought I was way out here. I thought I was the separate objective self in this scary territory with all kinds of stuff happening to me, all kinds of intensity. I'm trying to protect myself, keep myself secure. So no, how could anything creative happen there? That was all locked down. There was no, that was just a terrible thing. But through this process of inquiry, come back to this realization of, I am this unmanifest source. I am this pure potential. I am pure being. I am freedom itself. And still this dance is taking place, but now I actually don't, I realize that I don't know what this is. So this is very powerful, because then this is how this process, this dance is danced moment to moment. As it, now you have the basic process, the same basic process now, it's like a two-way thing. So there's an expression, there's like a desire, that desire is expressed, then there's a, there's some kind of desire from there to invert and return. So there's this outward and inward dance taking place, and we can be conscious participants in that. So what that looks like is you notice when you're taking a position, and you notice particularly, so there's not really any need to take, as I've said, is when we take a position, we're creating that polarity. So if we say I like it, well then I don't like it is automatically generated. But we don't need to concern ourselves if we like it. As long as the perception is I like it, as long as the perception is this is good, as long as the perception is I'm happy, there's no problem. But the moment that we encounter that opposite polarity, now we know exactly how to, it's like, it's not bad. It's just, it's like the signal that, okay, now this is the next step in the dance. Now this step, now this step, now this step, now this step, so that it is a play, it's a dance. So that this is very alive, it's a living process. It's not something static, it's not something dead, it's not something that you have to be rigid about. It should be playful and alive. Of course, at first, it doesn't feel that way at all. At first, it's just, I'm suffering, this is horrible, and I want freedom. But when you touch upon this inherent freedom, and you recognize that, then it needs to be alive, vibrant, lived, expressed, played, danced, because that's its nature. It's like the ocean, that makes waves. Waves aren't bad. So that's where we'll leave it for the formal portion today. And for those who are here live, we'll stay on for Q&A if you'd like. I'm going to end this recording now.